Welcome everybody to the very first episode of Real Estate Challenges Uncovered. I'm your host today, Maryanne Elsaesser, and I'm sitting with Michele Kowal, Rhonda Battifarano, and Mat Chapman. Wave, everybody.
What's up?
All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into our biggest challenges for this year and what our solutions were, and we're just going to have a live chat, and hopefully you'll be able to learn about the real estate transactions in this talk. So, I'm throwing it out. Let's dive in. By the way, I love the swag today.
Always wear swag. It's good. It's comfy.
Swag is good, right? Okay, Dream Team. Who wants to start? What was your biggest challenge of the year so far?
Ooh.
Rhonda looks ready.
I have a good one.
You have a good one.
I do.
I think I know which one it is.
You were part of it.
I'm always part of it on some level.
So we had a home that had been listed with another agent, and it needed a little...
I was right. That's the one you were going to talk about.
Yeah. Needed a little upgrading. Mm-hmm. And after some chats with our client, he listened to us, and we did some updating and got it ready for sale, and it looked nice. And
what did we do in the process of getting it ready? So talk about what the house looked like prior to and where we thought those challenges were going to be.
So it had a lot of stuff in it, right? Mm-hmm. So he had to depersonalize, get rid of his furniture. We had an estate sale for him, got it all cleaned out, and then we had him paint.
You convinced him to paint. Remember that?
Convinced him to paint.
Talk about how you convinced him to paint.
I just told him it was a great idea to get rid of the murals because they were ugly. No, I'm just kidding. They were dated. And it was time to cover up the murals, and he agreed with me. So we did that, and then we had our stagers come in, and we staged it and got it looking really modern and nice for today's buyers, and we sold it. Couple bumps in the road.
And then what happened? So we get our first contract out of the gate. So unsuccessful previous on the market with another agent. Mm-hmm. We do all this work to the house. Mm-hmm. We get it ready. We have our open house, and we get what?
An over-ask offer.
Mm-hmm. And we were pretty happy about that.
We were
as
excited.
Was the owner.
He was so excited.
Super happy about it.
It was only a day in.
So then what happened?
Well, that was done on FaceTime because the buyer wasn't here. And then the buyer came back, and she changed her mind, which is very fair.
Why did she change her mind?
I don't think it was exactly what she wanted.
Well, I think, listen.
Cold feet?
Cold feet?
I don't think it was cold feet. I think, number one, the buyer used an inspector who was known in the industry as the deal killer.
That's true.
And the inspection issues that came up were rather alarming.
That's
right?
true.
Are we going to name the deal killer?
No, we can't name the deal killer.
I don't think we can do that.
That would be terrible. That would be terrible.
Clear to say it wasn't our favorite home inspector.
I don't think it's anybody's favorite.
I don't think so.
All right, so...
they squashed the deal.
They squashed the deal. Seller was...
disappointed.
But...
positive.
That's a good thing. Okay.
He had us. And he knew that we were going to...
Boy, you're in love with us, aren't you?
Get us there. I am in love with us. We are the dream team, right?
We are the dream team. Okay, so we go back on the market.
Back on the market the next day.
And then what does that look like? And what were those challenges?
That was a long, 4 months.
A long 4 months.
That sat for a while.
But interestingly enough, the buyer that actually moved forward with the acquisition was somebody who came to, I think, the first open house.
She did come to the first open house.
So,
and then she saw that it had been, secured by another buyer. And then they were out of the country, and then things happened. They came back, saw it was available again, and they moved forward.
So
Not
in a
without
hot
a couple
market,
challenges.
But so here's the reality. In a hot market, we're on the market for 4 months.
Right.
And it's pretty stressful.
Very
right?
stressful.
You have to have clear communication with the seller.
Every day.
And the seller needs to know that you're working really hard. So what did you do to work really hard?
Well, I talked to the homeowner literally every day and kept him posted on what was going on, if we had showings, open houses.
I think you did a little more than that.
I made him cookies a lot.
You made him cookies a lot.
That's true, I did. When I would deliver news or ask for stuff, I would bring him cookies.
When Rhonda has anxiety, she makes cookies.
That's true.
So interestingly enough, the buyer really had some challenges with financing.
That's
right?
true, because they came, they are the American dream. These
Right.
people, they came to America, they own several businesses. They really wanted this house, but in order to obtain this house, they had to refinance and do some other adjustments on other properties. So that took us a hot minute to work with the other buyer, with the buyer's agent, who was also out of the country during the
How
process.
did that work? Working with the buyer's agent.
We helped a lot with that.
We helped a lot.
We helped a lot with that.
Yeah. So the thing is,
it worked,
the
though.
market at the time was moving really rapidly.
It was.
We have a house that is
hanging around.
potentially, for the price that we were asking and wanted to sort of secure for the seller,
Yeah.
the buyer population was rejecting the price, but our job was to try and secure as much and gain as much net profit to the seller. And he was okay with that waiting game.
100%.
So when you have a situation like that, you have to think a little bit out of the box, right? So
That's true.
knowing that there were no other offers on the table, how did we as a team, think out of the box? Do you remember?
You helped make some phone calls to other parties on the other side that you knew, just to vet them a little bit to make sure that they could actually
Right.
follow through with
And
this.
those relationships matter.
Yes, that's
during
true.
the course of building your career, you develop a lot of relationships, and relationships in real estate is the most significant thing. If you don't have solid
agree with that.
relationships,
This one really mattered. It
Yeah.
mattered that you knew the attorney on the other side, and our attorney was great on our side, and they communicated.
I mean, we
and-
even ultimately had to pick the inspector for the buyer because the agent was out of the
Out of the
country so
country.
much.
Yes,
So,
so
we
that
really, in my opinion, you did both sides of the transaction to get this deal to the closing table. Period. End of story.
Oh yeah, we worked together on that.
And right
one.
until the closing day. So
Literally on the
talk about the
closing
kids in
day.
the pool. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was great.
What?
The kids.
You
in
didn't
the
know
pool.
the kids were in the pool?
What kids?
The buyer's children. Like, we went for 3 or 4 inspections, and every time we went there, because it was hot, it was like August, right? The kids were in the swimming pool.
They came
I
in
was
their
there one of
bathing
those
suits?
days.
Yes,
Remember,
that's right.
I
you
called
called
you.
for
I
me.
called you. I'm like, this buyer has
Yeah.
their kids in the pool.
Yeah.
What? Like, this is not good. And they
It's a liability.
they didn't speak the best English, so
Correct.
it was like I couldn't communicate properly with them
Yes.
to tell to get the kids out of the
Yeah.
pool. So I said, Rhonda, can you call
Yes.
the buyer's agent to tell these people to get out of the pool?
Yeah.
And they would dive in clothes off.
Yeah.
all
I mean,
in.
no bathing suits,
No, they
jumping
were in their
the pool.
clothes. Yes,
Yeah.
so they did that every time we were there.
Even after being asked not to.
Yes.
I mean, talk about the kids selling the house, right?
I mean, they really did. And then ultimately, because I was so nervous that I was out there with the kids, like, most of
Ready
the
to
time
jump
while
in.
the parents were, like, out, like, doing the house stuff. I was, like, babysitting. And they asked me to babysit them, the children. They're like, could you be our babysitter?
Wow.
It was just funny. Anyways, yeah,
So unconventional financing,
that was tricky.
the day of closing, and how much time did you actually spend calming the seller down on a regular basis?
Oh, I wish I got paid for that. No, I'm just kidding. It was a lot of time. I love that seller. He was fantastic.
He's fantastic.
We keep in touch.
He's an amazing
Yeah, he's a
human
great
being.
guy.
But I think the point here, right, is that
it was
we
communication.
do this several times a year. Like I think we're right now up to 63 transactions total. So when you do this every single day, you're comfortable with it.
Right.
When you, and I always relate it to like having a baby for the first time, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you go through this whole process, right? Why are you laughing?
Well, I haven't had a baby, I guess, myself personally.
Well,
so
you've been on the
I've been
receiving
there.
end.
not very relatable
You've had
to
the
this.
catcher's mitt. You've had the catcher's mitt. And so you don't know. Or what about the first time?
Yeah, it's not.
The first time you held
A baby?
a baby,
My
right?
baby? It's scary.
Everybody's
Floppy,
baby.
it's floppy, it's
Right.
it's scary.
But now you can pick up a baby, sling it over your shoulder. You're good
Like,
to
I
go.
got this.
If
And
it's
I-
my baby, I find it hard to like hold someone else's baby.
Yes,
That's a
bring
flaw
in
I've
the
got.
other
It's
baby.
definitely a flaw I've got.
Hysterical.
So
That's
what
very
about the
funny.
first time you held Summer? It was scary.
Well, Summer was actually flung to me because Nancy had complications and Summer was on I can't believe
Okay,
saying this. It was
maybe-
on
maybe we
Nancy's
should-
chest.
maybe we should change
and I
the
swear,
course of
this
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 conversation.
doctor grabbed Summer like a cat would grab its baby.
Like by the
Just grabbed her by the neck and just went boom and threw her onto my chest. I was like, that's the first time I ever hold Summer.
Welcome to fatherhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, remember the anxiety that you had? Like,
Yeah.
what do I do? And then, of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
your wife is having a hard time, so
Yeah.
you just thought the whole world was going to end. And I think if we stay focused on the fact that that's pretty much how clients feel, it's their first time, and being sensitive to that, I think that's the most important thing that we can take forward in these relationships, right?
Agree.
So fast
really-
forward, day of closing, what happened? We're on our way. Why were we going out for Mexican that day? Do you remember? Was it just a
I think
random
we were
let's
just
have lunch?
going out for lunch.
Oh, you talking about Haciendas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the day?
It
That was the day.
supposed to be.
That was because I think it was just a team lunch, but we'd also just closed.
You closed one.
I think Michelle, myself, and you have just closed some of our biggest
Biggest
deals of
deals
the year,
ever.
actually. And so we were like, let's go celebrate it.
Yes, and we have
That's
margaritas.
what we. I know we were talking about.
That's
Yeah.
the best part of my job,
Yeah.
celebrating. I mean,
Yeah, those because we each had like a really big
so
deal
we're
this year.
on the way to the closing. You were late because we're getting phone calls.
Yes, so
Right?
I'm on my way to the closing, and I had all the keys because the buyer's agent wasn't even. It doesn't matter. We're selling. I have to have the keys. So I go there. I'm at the table, and the attorney is not really communicating to me. I don't know what's going on. Long story short, he says, "Just leave the keys. We're gonna close. It's gonna be fine. No problem." Great. I trust the attorney because they're in that. What's the word I'm looking for?
Supervisory role?
Yeah, like they are supposed to be like
Supervisory
trustworthy.
role.
What's the word I'm looking
You
for?
feel
here?
like they're in charge?
Yeah, like I felt like it would be, they're secure, like it should be the place to leave the keys. Fast forward, like an hour and a half later, the financing didn't come through, and the buyers were in the house, and the seller hadn't received their funds.
And the seller was pretty
And the
upset.
seller was very upset.
The seller was upset.
So now a few more phone calls between, I never had that happen, so.
So what was the solution? Because that's a perfect example of things going south and really having to pivot quickly to calm everybody down to figure it out. So
Yeah.
what was the solution?
Well, I called you, and I was like,
That's the
help,
solution?
this is the problem. No, so then we ended up calling, we called the other attorney. We called our
We called
attorney.
Dave, who really
and-
was not happy to hear from me.
Not
because
happy.
From his perspective, he had recited the story so many times.
Yes.
And I remember saying, like, I just need to know. I need to make sure that the seller is calm and okay. And
Yeah, because we needed to make sure
and,
that was
and
our
why
responsibility.
why were those keys released?
Why did
right?
you release the keys? But it all worked out. The
It all worked
financing came through the very like
How many
next
cookies
morning.
were you baking?
Yeah. I probably owed him some more cookies. But he was awesome. You know why? Because we communicated to him through every piece of that day. Like I didn't hold back anything. Matter of fact, I even had called the seller and told him, I said, I'm leaving the closing early. I left the keys with the attorney. I feel like they're safe there.
Mm-hmm.
They won't release the keys until you have fundage. Thank God I called him. Like I had sort of kept
It's
him.
always better to
I told him everything
Tell
like
them
from
upfront.
like as it was going on in real time that day. And then when he found out we didn't close, it wasn't like a surprise that they had
If you would have had to
keys.
call him with all this after the fact,
It would have been
no
bad.
good.
But I had
Yeah.
been so transparent, I feel
You
like
have to
from
get
the
ahead of it.
beginning. He knew I left the keys there. It all worked out, thank goodness. So
I think when people
It was stressful,
know the
though.
truth, you can come up with a solution.
yeah.
And that's what I always say, right?
Yes.
Problem, solution. Like, anybody can deal with any situation as long as you have a plan in place
Agree.
to kind of move it forward or to
And I think you
repair it.
really just have to be communicative with your buyers or your sellers and just keep them calm, but keep them, they want to know what's going on too, right? You just have to be transparent with them at all times and tell
So
them what's
start
going
to
on.
finish, right? Start
Yeah.
to finish.
Yeah.
Where you started with the seller's relationship,
Mhm.
where you ended with the seller's relationship, and what his take was on how you navigated the whole thing. Start to finish in
Oh,
3 sentences.
start to finish. Oh, that's tough. Don't do that. Anyway, it started out great. And no, it started out, Ted trusted me from
Full
the
circle.
beginning. Yeah, it came full circle. Ted trusted me from the beginning. We built a really great relationship through the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I am invited to their family home in Miami.
That's
That's sweet.
That's not a bad
That's a
story.
good full circle.
All right, Matt, your biggest challenge for the year.
I was going to say the deal I'm working on right now, actually, but then I decided it's still not over and it's still
He
not.
doesn't want to risk it.
I mean, the market's changing right now, right? So there's a big challenge that we're all in right now in this very moment in time.
When did you notice the shift?
I noticed the shift right at the end of summer, actually, on the other listing we had that still sold over list, but sold moderately, sluggishly, and only a little bit over list. And I thought, wow, this is something's different here.
Something doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, it was towards the end of summer. Now we're in the fall, and it's really, really starting to show the ugly side of what's going to happen soon. But actually, my biggest challenge I thought about was actually on the buy side.
Really?
It was the 12-month long deal.
I knew you were going to say
Oh,
yeah.
It took all year.
12-month long
It took
deal.
all year. It took
Yeah.
all
that. Which
year.
is affecting now the other side of it.
Which is
almost.
actually affecting, actually
His sale now.
the sale is tough. So
Because that wasn't ready.
All right, so
Because
let's
of
talk
timing.
about that. You
So
have a pretty considerable budget to spend to live in a geographic location,
yeah,
and you're showing pretty specifically. How many houses did you show? One?
literally this one house for this buyer. This buyer actually wanted to live literally with only in a very small area of Glen Rock. He only wanted to live on maybe 2 streets, maybe 3 if it was the right spot. He also wanted like new construction, and he wanted it ready to go. And it just so happened a house came on that was about 1.5 years old. It came on the market, and as soon as it came on, he knew the house. He had friends in the area. The family just wanted it, and so we went in. We bid on it straight away that first weekend. It turns out there was 2 bids on this house, so it went back and forward a little bit. We ended up winning the bid. We secured it. We got the bid, which we were really happy with.
What were the terms that you feel won the final and best?
For us, it was price, it was hands down, and also my buyer was a cash buyer. So we were a cash buyer. We came in pretty aggressive straight off the original bid. When we found out there was someone else, we really upped our game a lot because it was a house that they really wanted. So they felt comfortable, maybe potentially overspending for the house because it was the perfect house, the perfect location. It was like the perfect storm. So I let my buyer know that going in at this price, we may be overpaying for this house. We could be paying a pretty good premium for this house, and we don't know where the market's going. And my buyer said, that's not a concern for me. My concern is that I secure this location. So
Do you remember what the price per square foot on that was?
it's in it's high 400s. It actually could even be close to 500. And which is pretty high for Glen Rock.
That is high.
And so we secured it. We all felt comfortable. I felt comfortable letting him know that my thoughts on that we were potentially overpaying for it. He let me know that he was okay doing that. So it was two-way. We felt good with it. We won the bid.
Right, because there's always the numerical portion
Yeah.
of a real estate transaction, but what you can't really weigh out is the emotional component,
Yeah.
or the value of that family dynamic that plays into
Yeah.
it, and you never know where somebody is going to
Yeah.
go in terms of highest number. But I think by very clearly stating that you thought he was overpaying, I think that ultimately helps people understand that if in the fact that they need to sell it going forward, they could be in a situation where they come to closing with money.
Yeah, well, his
Agree.
thought process as well is this is like a 15, 20-year house for me. So it doesn't matter if I pay an extra $50,000 or $100,000 right now. It doesn't matter. In the big scheme of things, to him, it didn't really make that much difference. So I felt comfortable with that. Actually, that was the easiest part. Securing the house was the easiest part. That's not even
It
the
was
hard
closing.
We
That
didn't
was
get
part.
to the
hard.
tough part
So
yet.
we went through the whole transaction. We did our home inspections. We did everything. And then it came to about a few days before closing. And I forget to mention, this was a for sale by owner. This house as well. So not only am I just trying to win this bid, but I'm dealing with a homeowner rather than another realtor. And this homeowner, I think, was a little bit over his head when it came to what he was doing.
Right. Doesn't really understand the process. And
Yeah, he had a good idea of it, but like it was a lot going on. So I had to sort of walk both the seller and the buyer through the transaction, which is always tough. We always do it sometimes, and it becomes very
we're
difficult.
2 for 2 on that.
Yeah. And so I was working both sides. But anyway, a few days before the closing, it became apparent that they couldn't get the CO for the house. And they couldn't,
What's a CO?
certificate of occupancy. They couldn't get it for the house because during his construction, there was a part of the process that he didn't close out, some permits and some things he hadn't done.
The final construction.
The final construction. And in between the period of him building it and him finishing everything off, the building
ordinance.
department had a changeover between the inspector and there was new people in the building department. So someone had left, someone had come in, and someone had come in and had some new rules. The house didn't conform to the new rules. In the end, the house was 2 feet too tall in the back. It was like the house was 2 feet taller than it should have been based on the new rules. Also, the house had encroached the street. The porch had encroached the street a little, half
So
a
it
foot
didn't
too
meet
much.
the impervious coverage percentages.
It wasn't impervious
Half a
coverage.
foot.
It was too close to the street.
For the variance or something.
So
The setbacks.
yeah. So in the end, the seller had to actually go and do some variances to get this through. My buyer decides, I love this house. I'm sticking around.
And the seller was
Right.
pretty confident that he was going to be able to pull this off.
He was very confident.
Because, do you remember why? I do.
No, I don't.
Because his position was that he had gone through the construction project, and during the time that they were doing their preliminary inspections along the way, it was approved by
Right.
the previous regime.
Right.
Right?
Agreed. So like he felt like it would all be pretty simple stuff. We just had to hang around maybe 45, 50 days for a variance to sort of be approved. But we had to wait for the variance because it's not like they do it every week. They do it,
Once a month?
once a month, I think, or even
Or once
every
every
2
2
months. I
In
think
the
it's every
summer,
2
I think
months.
it's once every 2
It
months.
was in the summer, so it was every 2. So we had to wait for that.
Hurry up and wait.
So we waited patiently. So yeah, I call this deal perseverance. Like that's
Yeah.
literally what I call this deal. So we waited patiently, and he went for his variance, and they completely denied him on all fronts.
To make a point, mostly.
I think it felt
To
like
make a point.
It felt like for everyone it was to make a point, but it was also in their eyes it's like he was going for too many things. He had done too many things wrong, and they did not want to give him all these variances and pat him on the back and say, well, you know,
and sort
see you
of
later.
give everybody else permission, right? Because
yeah.
it sets precedence.
So then they basically told him at the variance board, you can't come in here and ask for like 3 variances. You need to remediate at least 1 or 2 of these and then maybe we'll give you 1 variance. Wow. So did that take some time? But it took time just to get to that. Then he had to do the work. He basically worked out that he had.
And in the meanwhile, he had rented something, right? So he was
the seller
carrying-
had rented a property
Yep.
because he had bought another property that he was going to build another new construction. So he was tied to
3 properties.
3 properties at the time, which was devastating to him in a monetary factor.
Sure.
He's also at that point where I personally thought my buyer was like, okay, this is too complicated. Let's leave. Let's walk away.
But they didn't.
But we decided, what's the point?
Yeah, no harm.
There was-
We
right?
had no
harm
other
in
property.
waiting.
There was no other property we wanted to buy. There was no other property being built in the 2 or 3 streets that we wanted to potentially go for. We did come up with an idea of maybe like door knocking and asking people in the area that has houses that may look a little shabby, would they be interested in selling? Because then we may knock that down and build our own home. But then that's going to take a long period of time.
Anyways.
Also, constructing a home for a first time ever is not the easiest thing. So we decided, let's just stick around with this house. We didn't know it was going to take 12 months, but we stuck around. And
It's only 4 more gray hair for you.
yeah, but the other thing is,
Okay.
like, I'm constantly communicating with the seller because he doesn't really understand the whole process, and he's working as hard. So I'm trying to keep in contact with him. I'm trying to keep in contact with my buyer all the time. We were always throwing out different scenarios as to why we should stick around, why we should not stick around. What if he does fix some of these things and we don't like what some of these fixes are? What if we don't like what the changes are? Maybe that doesn't work for us. So I'm always communicating with the seller. What are you going to do? What's your plan? In the end, instead of cutting the whole roof off, which is what we thought originally, and changing the roof
I
line,
mean, imagine
dug
if
out
they
the
made
dirt,
him
right,
do
or
that.
something?
That would be
that's what we
Change the
thought.
landscape.
They actually were able. The measurement for the house comes directly from the land or the ground level that it is next to the house, like literally next to the house. So the seller worked out he could just raise the level of the land next to the back of the house on both corners
And give it back.
and put a retaining wall around to then have a new measurement point, which
Made the house
which
shrink.
made the house shorter, I guess. Even though it
Not
wasn't.
really.
The house didn't change.
I mean, how the building department
Shorter, not
sees
so
this
much.
is it doesn't really make sense to me, but that makes
It
sense to
worked.
them. So he made a very nice he raised the level
It came
and he
out
made
nice.
beautiful retaining walls on both back corners of the house, which suited what was already in the landscaping in the back of the house. He did an amazing job. Like it really
He had to
looked
spend
great.
so much more money.
It actually looked better. To be
It did,
honest,
it
the
looked
house
good.
at the end of the day looked better because of it.
I didn't see it
Because
after.
sloping, it was a bit of a sloping block, and it actually made it look really nice. And then so he did that. He was able to get a variance on the encroachment to the front of the house, but then we had to, once the work was done, then we had to wait a couple of months for the next variance. Once the variance gets approved, you have to wait at least 45 days for people to dispute the variance, which thank God, like we didn't get any disputes. And then we were able to, close on the house. But it wasn't as simple as that. It was like, now we need to re-inspect the house. They've lived in this house for
Like,
probably
12 months.
12 months.
12 months.
We need to re-inspect the house to, not a home inspection, but is the house the same? Then we have to re-inspect the retaining walls. Like, there was a lot more work involved. There was a lot of conversations constantly with my buyer and the seller. And in the end, we closed. We didn't get nasty and say, let's lower the price. The market was shifting. I felt like there was a point where we could actually say, hey, the market shifted. We just stayed true to our number, which everyone was happy to do. And we closed on the property. And I call it perseverance. Like
That
the
was a
deal.
long one.
It was tough for that seller. That seller, I had to help him through a lot of things. I couldn't believe what the town did to him, but they did it.
Right.
So
What
yeah.
was the height of the emotion in that transaction, and how did you kind of bring it down and temper the emotions just to get everybody thinking about solutions?
The height of the emotions was more about what is he going to do to this house to make it pass? Like, is the roof getting chopped off? What is happening? And it was like, and it was so many unknowns. And I feel like the seller didn't want to communicate everything 100% clear. He was obviously trying to hide what he was doing and how he was doing it, because I think he felt like he had to protect his interests in what he was doing. And are we going to pull out anyway? So, and he was a private person, so he didn't always want to have to share 100% of everything. And so it felt sometimes shady for us as a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Is he being shady? Is this going to be shady? So the emotion for my buyer was more on those lines. And that went on for like 3 months, and trying to work everything out. And timelines. The timelines were so unclear. How long is it going to take you to do this work? I had to learn what the process was for all the variance boards in Glenrock. I had to learn what the inspection timelines
Real
were.
estate
I
101.
had to
You
learn-
graduated.
I had to
I
learn
know, right?
every process through a variance board, but also through inspections to come in and check on some of the work. For instance, the seller got really confused because when they did those retaining walls, they were told, yeah, if you do these retaining walls, fine, that'll work. So he did the work. But then when he went to get it approved, town said, you didn't have the inspector come out and inspect before the work was done. And he's like, but I was never communicated that.
Yeah.
That actually took another month, I think,
That's
for
poor
them.
guy.
The town actually
I
went to
know,
the
I
town
feel bad.
lawyer to see what they wanted to do. So there was so much uncertainty what this lawyer would say.
With no direction.
Oh, by the way, the lawyer was on holiday for a couple of weeks too. It was summer, so he was off, so he was gone. So there was just so much inconsistent information coming from everywhere, and the emotion got hard on everyone's end at that time, and I'm in the middle of it.
Well, seller's
Like-
being told one thing, right,
Yeah.
by the town. He's scared to tell you because you don't really know.
And I have a
He's
relationship
not
with the
getting
seller
Yeah.
because I'm trying to keep him in check with like us, and trying to keep my buyer in check
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
It was a tricky situation. The emotion was high on both sides. I'm in the middle, just
You
trying
were,
to.
you were a good therapist.
I was a therapist.
I always say that.
You
We're
did a good job.
unlicensed
I was a
therapists.
therapist.
We are unlicensed therapists.
Yeah.
You brought up the fact that you were suspicious of some of the behaviors.
Yeah.
And it sounded to me like what you were really saying was a lack of communication. And it made me think of the times where we'll talk to each other about a certain topic and this happened and what should we do? And I feel like what our final solution is always is to be fully transparent, right? Win or lose, be fully transparent, give everybody the facts, and that's where trust is built. And I
100%.
think, and I want you guys to elaborate on this, but I feel like that's one of the things that we do really well. We communicate the truth. Oftentimes on the other end, we have situations where people aren't communicating the truth because they actually think that they're going to cover something up where ultimately everything's always disclosed and there's a trust compromise. Your
I
biggest
definitely-
challenge, Michele?
I'm gonna have to say the house that it started out as a really exciting opportunity.
I
Um,
like that. Excited.
Well, I had sold the house to a client with the intention, it was a disaster, with the intention of flipping it. So sold it, was gonna take a few months for him to fixed it up, let me pick the kitchen, let me pick colors. It was fun, it was really fun, and I was looking forward to doing it. Got it all done, it was adorable, very, very, very small house, but very cute. And we go on the market, we have open houses, everybody thinks it's adorable, but the problem now is it's really small. The bedrooms are really small, the neighbors' houses are, their garbage is in the front yard, things like that, so people pull up and it's like, oh, well, this house is really cute, but I gotta look at that.
But
So
you
we
did
had-
get a really good offer.
We did, yeah, it
Out
was
of
a
the
little bit of a
box.
struggle, but we did get a really good offer, and for the, I didn't calculate the price per square foot, but for the price we were asking and the size of the house, it was
fair.
an amazing offer. It was amazing, and it was cash. So it could have been done. They do an inspection, suddenly there's a list like this of things they want done. And then the house is basically rebuilt. So there's these
Was it
things.
the same inspector?
No, I don't think it
The
was.
deal breaker.
Yeah.
Wasn't the
Yeah,
deal
right?
breaker.
Hashtag.
No, but it
I don't
was,
think it was.
it was sort of like, this is the way of bringing the price down. So then that was a little bit of a struggle. Being that it was right out of the gate, the client's feeling was, well, if I could get that offer, I'll get another one. I'm not going to do all these things.
Right.
And, the market, for the size, it was going to be tough to get that same offer again.
And he was being stubborn.
And
Let's
he,
just face
yeah,
it.
he could have,
I mean, the truth of the matter
we
is,
could have done a little bit, offered a little bit of a credit, something, and it would have, they told me afterwards, they would have taken a tiny credit and been done. They just felt like we weren't playing nice. So,
and you can't control
That
that.
was- no.
You can make
no,
suggestions.
and,
but you
and believe
totally
me, I
can't
made a
control
lot
that.
of suggestions.
Yes, you did.
There were a lot of phone calls, there were a lot of, let's try, if we just do this, we'll be fine. If we don't do this, we could not get another one.
Well,
We could,
the other problem you ran into was, the restrictions and showings and the cameras being in the property, which
Yeah.
really made the buyers feel
after
uncomfortable.
after a while, they weren't really cooperative with letting people in, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense because it was vacant.
It's a
and
vacant
let as many
property.
people see it as possible. You'll get another offer. If you limit people coming in, it's going to be a little bit harder to get someone. So in the end, it came off the market, and that was the end.
And he
of it.
put a rental in there.
Yeah. We don't know, but
So, yeah.
but he
Someone
didn't.
lives there now.
So those were some of our challenging moments. I think where I want to go next is our shifting market and talking about how we're going to navigate these changes and how some of the agents don't even really know that the market shifted.